So I believe people have a subconscious state that they resist being sold. I stand on a stage, and within 2 minutes of being on the stage...
Congrats on getting beyond $1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of Easy Pay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond $1 million. In nearly 100 episodes of Beyond $1 Million, this is the first guest that I have brought back for a round 2. And there's a reason for it. Not only is this guest tremendously charismatic, entertaining, and thoughtful in his approach to things, he has a lot to teach, and we have a lot to learn. Marshall Sylver was a great interview in part 1 in his home in Las Vegas. Part 2 happened in his home in Carlsbad, California, on the ocean, which was astounding. And I'm sorry you won't really get to see it, but it's very difficult to shoot an ocean backdrop without proper lighting, which I do not travel with because it's a pain in the ass. But you'll get a lot out of this episode. We got to dig into the things that I didn't have a chance to in round 1. We talk about the mechanics of his business and how it works, how he sells things in a way that seems effortless and makes people want to buy the product without any hidden sales tactics. It's really an interesting framework for crafting an offer and crafting a pitch without it feeling heavy and sleazy. So there are great sales lessons in here. We also get to hear the story of how he went from a child living with 9 siblings to having the confidence, mindset, identity to be a multi-millionaire and live the life that he wants with his lovely family, who did interrupt us in the middle of the episode, which you may or may not hear. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I think that there is a very fun journey to go on here. It's just sort of an entertaining episode to listen to, but there are also great nuggets to take away, both in sales, operations, and mindset. Because even though it seems fluffy at times, if you don't create yourself, if you don't work on personal development yourself, you're not going to be able to take things to the next level. The limitation is always you. So without further ado, let's jump into part 2 of Marshall Sylver on Beyond $1 Million. So, Marshall Sylver, you found magic when you were 10.
Yep.
It transformed into something different when
I got hypnotized in a show.
At 16.
At 16.
In your high school auditorium.
At my high school.
Yep.
And it made me realize that if that was hypnosis, I say you do, no question, then hypnosis is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. And I think that so many people don't realize it's not hard to hypnotize people. It's hard to bring them out of the hypnosis they're already in.
You told me that. And so I want to talk the business side of this, because you found this mechanism. You did not find a way to monetize it. 22 years old, 23, you moved to Hollywood, and you see David Copperfield,
right,
who I grew up thinking, how the fuck is he doing this? Right. And you thought, all right, I don't want to live in the shadow of that. I want to do something that's different. He's already got a lot of runway, a lot of wind behind his sails. Where do you go from there in terms of business?
So for me, what it was I went through 8 jobs, 8 apartments in 2 years, and came full circle back to hypnosis. And I realized that hypnosis is real magic.
Meaning at the age of 30?
At the age of 23.
Okay.
So from 21 to 23, I went through 8 jobs, 8 apartments in 2 years. And the last gig that I had before I made a full-time devotion to hypnosis as a career was I was a DJ. And I got paid $250 for 4 hours work, which is decent money back then. $62 an hour was good money. And I was working military bases, spinning discs for 4 hours while they had exotic dancers dancing.
Love this.
So I'm 22, almost 23 years old. I've got these semi-nude women dancing, and I'm spinning the discs, and they don't want to have anything to do with all the military people because they're dangerous. I'm the DJ. I'm safe. So they just want to hang out with me.
Dream for a 22-year-old.
Which was quite the circumstance.
Yes.
Wasn't fulfilled, though. And one day...
Shocking.
I saw a flyer for a guy that had been a DJ, and his name was Skip. And the flyer was for Skip the Hypnotist. and he was performing on the military base. Well, I knew Skip. He used to do the gig with me. So I called my buddy up and I said, what is going on? He said, I'm not a DJ anymore. I'm a hypnotist. And I said, well, that's awesome. He said, yeah, I used to earn $250 for 4 hours. Now I make $2,500 for 1 hour in the same exact location. And I said, what'd you do? And he said, I studied with this guy. And so he told me the name of the guy, supposedly the best hypnotist in the world. And it was $3,000 to go do a 50-hour course, 10 hours a day, 5 days straight. And I went up to go do the training with the guy. And halfway through the first day, I knew that I knew. And I think that that's the biggest bridge most people have got to make, is you got to, again, know who you are. And I knew that all those previous years of studying hypnosis without application, if I'm studying now with the number one hypnotist in the world, and he's doing what he's doing, and I know what he's doing, I know. And so I left the class, got back in my car in LA, drove back to San Diego where I lived, and cold called a nightclub chain called Carlos Murphy's, booked my show 4 nights a week, and went back up to LA halfway through the second day. The instructor's angry that I'm late, that I didn't show up for the first part of the class, didn't show up for the afternoon on the first day. And he's saying, people just don't commit. They're never going to get anywhere without committing. And I said, I was so impressed, Gil, with what you taught me yesterday. I went down to San Diego and I booked my non-existent show 4 nights a week. And without missing a beat, he says, and that's the exact reason people succeed, is they commit to making things happen. And that's business. Business is not waiting for things to be right. Perfection paralyzes. They'll never be right. I say put out crap, and then put out crap 2.0. It worked for Microsoft. It'll work for you. And, it works for anybody that does software, because software is never done.
Yeah.
And so many people, that perfectionism is what stops them. I'll write the book when I'm really ready, or I'll launch the podcast, or I'll start my company, or I'll, be innovative. And you got to do it now.
Yeah.
You got to put out bad stuff so that you can rehearse, review, and revise.
Yeah. I mean, I largely agree with that. I had sticky notes all over my first house that I ever owned that said, to have a standard of perfection is to have no standards at all.
Mm-hmm.
And what that ultimately meant to me is I didn't want to put out crap. So what it meant to me was put out a highly reduced version of V1. And so the first iPhone that came out, didn't have copy and paste.
Right.
That's fucking crazy. But I love the example, because they were like, look, we're getting this thing out. No, it doesn't have everything, but what it does have works.
Right.
And it's solid. So most people would not spend $3,000 on a course when they're 23.
It was every dime I had.
That's crazy. And so you from the beginning had this mentality of, let me learn from the best and figure out and let them show me the path, right? And today, functionally, that's what you're selling also.
That is what I sell.
Yeah.
And it is what I do, though. We teach what we most need to learn.
And so how did you get there? So you watched this course, you learned hypnosis, you knew that it was the thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're 23, and you've spent the last dollars you have. And that's a far cry from having sold 600 million in courses.
Right.
And seminars.
Yes.
So what was the next step?
So the first step was go with what you know. Build on the existing foundation. So I'm an entertainer. I was a magician. I'm an entertainer. I know that piece. So I started off with a show. Started off doing the aforementioned nightclubs. And I got a corporate gig. And the corporate gig was for Kentucky Fried Chicken franchisees.
Amazing.
And so they pay me $2,000 to come do a show at their franchisee conference.
Did you get free chicken?
No, I didn't, but I made everybody chickens and made one of them Colonel Sanders.
Amazing.
Yeah, so, the Colonel Sanders running around with a fake axe after all the other subjects. And this drunken franchisee walks up to me at the end of the presentation, the end of the show, and he says, that was a great show. That was so much fun. Can you hypnotize my employees to show up to work on time? And I said, no, except I can hypnotize you to communicate better so they will.
Ouch.
Well, he looked at me, and to his credit, he said, wow, that was good. He said, what would you charge to teach me that? I'd never taught anybody that, so how could I know what to charge? So I'm one of those people that I like to throw numbers out and see how the world responds. So I said, 1 day training, $25,000. And he said, can I bring 9 of the other franchise partners? Can I bring 9 other people, 10 people total? And we can split it. I said, absolutely. He put it together. And so, now I'm making $25,000 in 1 day. That was when the bell went off for me. That was when I said, people will pay more for their business than they will for their entertainment.
No question.
And so that was the beginning. And as they say, the rest is history. We just did a small event, 65 people, general public. And, again, I'm of the nature that certainly I am in front of 15,000, 20,000 people at a time from time to time. I'd rather have 1,000 buyers. If the 15,000 people have 1,000 buyers,
sure,
I'd rather just be in front of 1,000 buyers and not bother with the other 14,000. Some people want to be in front of the other 14,000.
Right.
Some people want that ego stroke. I don't care.
Yeah.
I just want to be in front of the buyers.
I largely share that mentality, and it's actually one of the interesting considerations for this podcast, because I largely am speaking to people that are 8, 9, 10 figures, right? That are beyond $1 million.
Right.
Yet it's super relevant information, and the net is way larger below $1 million.
Yep.
Right. And so I struggle with that to some extent, because the exposure below $1 million, A, is good for everything in terms of just eyeballs. And B, there are people in that group that are going to fucking make it. Right?
Well, and
They're
they
gonna
need
fucking
you.
Kill it.
They need you.
And I like that part of it, right? And I want to serve that. I want to provide that. But to your point, you want to be in front of the 1,000 people that are buyers versus the 15,000.
Well, I guess, and it's, I think, two different points. Yes, I would agree that we want to help those other people that are non-buyers, and maybe they'll move over and be motivated. Maybe the one that was only at the conference because they got out of work for the day will say, wow, how great would it be if I didn't want to get out of work for the day?
Yeah.
How great would it be if I was doing something that I didn't want to avoid?
Yeah.
And so maybe they'll make the turn. But for me, the piece that I was wanting to communicate is that what I do isn't about ego anymore.
Yeah.
I've had the accolades. I wrote a video. Some people would, call it a sales video these days. That was 28 and a half minutes. And in the first year, it did $120 million in sales. So I laugh when I see people say, oh yeah, I wrote this video sales letter and we did, $2 million. And I'm going, okay. Well, I created an infomercial, and I didn't even have any money to produce the infomercial. I had 10 grand. So the entire infomercial was produced for $10,000, and then it went on to do 120 million in the first year.
So you said the rest is history. I want to talk about the history. So you found this thing fortuitously where you said, hey, I'm a hypnotist. I'm going to talk to the chicken people. And you had fun doing it. And then you stumbled upon this idea of, oh shit, I can help the business actually be better at leadership functionally. 25 grand for the day.
Yep.
So from there, again, there's still this gap to 600 million in sales,
So what
to
was
50
the
million
gap?
a year. So
That's a good question.
what was the next jump where you thought, hey, that there's money there. How do I formalize a business or some structure?
I'm in Vegas, and I am doing my show, and I'm making about $80,000 a week.
Hold on. So you had a show in Vegas at the time.
When the infomercial hits,
Okay.
I net $22 million that first year off the $120 million in sales.
Hold on. So right away, early, when you're 23, 24, you do this, you're doing the hypnosis from stage for groups, and you do the infomercial right then?
No, the infomercial came about 10 years later when I was 31, 32 years old.
So you were doing the same type of thing until that point?
Yeah, and I'm making good money.
Great.
I'm doing my show, I'm doing seminars, and even in my late 20s, I'm doing $1 million, $2 million a year.
Amazing.
And I'm having a good life. That's the biggest thing, is I'm doing what I love.
Amazing.
Never feels like work. And then the infomercial hits in my early 30s. The first year, I net $22 million. I don't want to give 13% to California, and I want to open up my show in Las Vegas. And so I immediately moved to Las Vegas and open up my show there. Now I'm doing what I wanted to do for years, and that is star on the Strip in Las Vegas. I'm working 5 nights a week, 75 minutes a night, and I'm making $80,000 a week. By anybody's standards, that's a good life.
Yes.
That's a good life.
And what era is this?
This is, right around 2000. So late 90s, early aughts.
So this is super relevant. So people that are younger don't really understand how inflation works. And I'm 43.
Yep.
And I'm just fucking figuring it out. Like truly. And it truly, in the last couple of years, I've been able to step back, look at it, and think, oh, the numbers aren't the numbers that they were when I was growing up.
Correct.
Right? Making $1 million when I was growing
Doesn't mean anything
up.
now.
No, making $1 million when I was growing up is now like 2.2 million
At least.
a year. Yeah.
At least.
So making $2.5 million, $3 million a year in 2000
was a lot of money.
Very significant.
It was a lot of money, and I was happy. Then the infomercial hits. I make $22 million in the first year, move to Vegas. I lose, I don't know, $2 million in the first 3 months of opening my show because I'm spending money on marketing. I've mounted the show. I'm on the main stage of the Sahara Hotel. I'm paying for everything and it's not working. And so what I believe is you keep tweaking things until you find the combination. And so I kept tweaking things. And eventually I tweak it and I figure it out. And we go from struggling to sold out overnight. Figured out the tweak.
What was the tweak?
It was momentum. So I'm not able to sell tickets. It's just I'm fighting against Cirque du Soleil, and I'm not Cirque du Soleil. I'm Marshall, and I've got limited funds, and it's just me on stage. It's just me. But what I did was I hired a band of people that went door to door in Vegas, and they sold my tickets that were selling for $30. They sold the tickets for $3 a ticket to locals. And so the locals started descending upon my show. So now anytime somebody was in the casino, there'd be lines through the casino to get into my show. Now we got a buzz. I'm doing 2 shows a night. We got a buzz of people leaving my show, walking back into the casino saying, oh my God, best show I've ever seen. And so we created that momentum, and pretty soon the momentum took over, and I'm making a boatload of money. I go from there over to the stratosphere. I build my own showroom. I pay to build a showroom because there wasn't one there. And I'm there for a year. And once again, I'm making big money. I'm working 5 nights a week. I'm having a great time. This guy shows up at the end of one of my shows, and he's from China. He's from Taiwan specifically. And he's speaking broken English. And he buys 2 sets of my products, which at the time was like a lot of money. It was probably like a couple grand. So it was highly unusual for someone to buy 2 sets of my product. He buys 2 sets of the product.
Hold on, you have a product.
I have a bunch. I have all the infomercial products.
Got it. Okay, so we kind of skipped this part. So the infomercial, you were selling a product.
I was selling a home-based product that taught you how to reprogram your brain for better relationships, more money, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual well-being, called Passion, Profit, and Power.
Got it. And so you sold it. You had this breakout year. Crazy.
Yep.
What was the number?
I netted $22 million that year.
Crazy. So you netted $22 million that year selling that product. And from there, you went to do the stage thing in Vegas. You've got your own shows in Vegas where you're doing the hypnosis thing from stage and doing 80 grand a week. Are you still selling the products during these times?
Yeah, see, that was the thing, is that I have a belief that if you have an audience, you should sell them something.
Fair.
And so even though I'm doing my show in Vegas, at the end of my show, I would give away a couple of products, my non-smoking kit and my fat loss kit, to the audience. And I'd say, who else wants these products? And everybody in the room would go, yeah, I do. I'd say, there's good news. They're available out in the foyer after the show. I'll be out there to sign autographs, take pictures with you. And if you buy product, I'll sign your products as well. So this man from Taiwan buys all of my products, a couple $1,000s worth. He wants me to autograph everything. And as is common inside of the Chinese culture, at least, he wanted me to take a lot of pictures. And so I'm getting kind of weary, and it's wearing thin on me. And I'm about to tell the guy, let me just give you your money back. I really don't want to take a picture with this product, a picture with that product. But he's going on and on. In the midst of him standing there, he says, you bigger than Elvis in Taiwan. What do you mean I'm bigger than Elvis in Taiwan? Your infomercial on all the time. My infomercial's on all the time in Taiwan. He goes, yeah, you biggest selling infomercial of all time. And I'm not insulting anybody. That's just kind of the accent that he did, and I'm doing it poorly. And I said, that's interesting. Who's the promoter running my infomercial? Because my infomercial wasn't running in Taiwan. What happened was somebody had hijacked it, and they bootlegged it. And they dubbed all my products over into Chinese, and they were selling all the product, but they weren't paying me a royalty. And so he gave me the name of the promoter. I called the promoter up and I said, are you the guys that carry Marshall Sylver's infomercial? And they said, yes. I said, where are you sending the royalty checks? Because I haven't seen them. Mm-hmm. And so they started paying me. The other thing this guy says, though, he says, I want to bring you to Taiwan to do your show at night and do your lecture during the day. And I said, I don't know. What language do they speak in Taiwan? He said, they speak Chinese. I said, I don't speak Chinese. He says, we use interpreter. I said, I don't know if hypnosis will work through an interpreter. He said, we'll pay you $50,000 a day, 10 days straight, pay you the $500,000 up front. I said, I think it'll work just fine. It'll work just fine. And so we booked the 10 days. I go to the entertainment director of the hotel, and I said, I'm going to take my 2 weeks of vacation on these dates. And he said, oh, great. What are you going to do? You going to go hang out on the beach or something? I said, no, I'm going to go to Taiwan. They're paying me $500,000 for 10 days of work. and he kind of a funny look on his face. And he said, let me get back to you. Let me check and see if we can let you go. And he gets back to me. He said, you can't go. And I said, what do you mean? I've got the vacation time coming. It's a 4-wall. I pay for my own room. I built my own theater. What do you mean I can't go? He said, if you leave, we're going to shut your show down. And I said, well, I've already cashed the check. I'm not giving it back. I'm going. And so I called their bluff and I go over to Taiwan. Sure enough, I come back and they had shut my show down.
Wow.
I come to find out later on, the entertainment director knew that if I went out and earned that kind of money, I was never coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And he was right. I don't know if we talked about this in the first interview. I come back, I get a call from Ron LeGrand, the real estate guy.
Yeah, we did. So I want to pause you on that because if you haven't heard the other episode, you need to go listen to it.
Yeah, listen to episode 1. Got a lot of goodies in there. And the other episode was shot at my main residence in Las Vegas.
Yes.
So at any rate, that changed my whole business model.
So from there, we're going to
just kind of fast forward and condense it.
Jump over this. So you went to somebody else's stage and you found out that you could speak on somebody's stage at their seminar, sell from stage and crush it.
Yes.
And you also got a lesson in pricing.
And I got a lesson in being rewarded for not my time, for what I produced. And that is the distinction. So the fast forward of everything, how did I go? Certainly I had a big boost on the front end doing 120 million in sales with the infomercial the first year, another 100 million the second year.
Which has to change your relationship with money and the way that you look at these things.
It didn't change my relationship with money. I just had a whole lot more of it. I'd always had a really good relationship with money, except it's kind of like that line from the Social Network. $1 million's not cool. $1 billion is cool.
I love this. So I don't want to skip over this part because you spoke from stage, you crushed it, you made something like, several $100,000 from stage that day. And
I made $400,000 in 90 minutes.
Yeah. So you realized, hey, speaking from stage is a thing and I can monetize this way. The gap from there to current state is super important because you've had these successes of, you're making a couple, 3 million a year as you, right? As a one-person business.
Right.
But you've also got these products moving. You had a big product launch through an infomercial. Then you realize, hey, I can sell this more systemically from stage. So now you get into a different era, which is I was this guy promoting my shows in Vegas, having sort of a standing thing every night in Vegas, crushing it. Now I'm moving into, I want to basically do courses or do seminars. So how did you think about the transition in business itself at that point? Because that's a different thing. And did you look at it that way? Or did you just say, I'm going to roll with it and see how it goes?
The big distinction for me, and the one that should matter to anybody watching this interview, is I realized the greatest value anybody has in their business is an existing customer. And I think most businesses spend the majority of their efforts on customer acquisition, going after new customers. And I realized your current customer already likes you. So when I seek to make more money, there's one question I ask myself: how do I help my existing customer do better? How do I help that existing business that I'm serving make more money? And usually it's through non-traditional revenue, finding revenue streams that they wouldn't even think about. And by helping my customer find non-traditional revenue, what happens is now I open up all sorts of pots of gold for them that they wouldn't have looked at, that require no additional effort, no additional cost in marketing, no real additional sales push on their part, because the customer that they have will automatically need whatever that is.
Beyond a Million is brought to you by Easy Pay Direct. If you're an entrepreneur and you are still using a product like Stripe or PayPal to accept payments, it is time to find out why the largest names in your industry would never consider doing that. Check out easypaydirect.com/BAM to find out more.
So we go into this in not like super deep, but we go into some detail in episode 1 about this. But what you're basically talking about is your model turned into speaking to other people's audiences to sell your product in your seminar, your service, which is where we started today, which is if you don't have the mindset,
you don't have anything.
You're not going to execute. Yeah. So did you figure that out from Ron LeGrand seminar at moment 1, or did you figure that out later that you wanted to monetize through other people's stages?
I figured that piece out through Ron LeGrand. I instantly realized that I would make more money not asking for a speaking fee, by actually speaking for free. Now, times change. And these days, there's kind of a weird phenomenon. I don't understand it, where people just get on people's stages just to speak, and they're neither compensated for speaking nor selling anything. So they're just getting up so that their brand is recognized and everybody knows me. I don't get it.
Long tail.
I don't get it, and I don't like it, frankly.
Yeah.
And here's why I don't want to get it, and here's the reason I don't like it. I think that you train people on how to treat you. And if I'm teaching people that my time is not valuable, that I don't need to be compensated here, you said the word long tail. I'll play the long game, and I'll figure out how to monetize it down the road. Okay. Well, if I'm going to monetize it down the road, and that's not offensive, then what's offensive about anybody wanting to monetize it now?
Yeah.
And if I'm going to teach businesses how to make money, wouldn't it make more sense for me to teach them not to play the long game? Wouldn't it make more sense for me to teach them, here's how you monetize it now, have your customers joyfully hand you a credit card in the short term,
Yeah.
and then in the long term, hand you the credit card repeatedly?
Yeah. I'm visualizing two different avatars of people listening. One is like, oh, that makes sense. Let me figure out how to monetize the audience. And the other is thinking, whatever, old man, this is how it used to work in the past. That's not how it works today with social media. And I think that both are actually beautiful sentiments. And
They're choices.
Well, and I think to the latter.
First of all, they call me old man, and I'm not old. I'm level 61. Just want to be clear on that.
I very deliberately use those words.
I'm over it.
Yes. And
by the way, we're at my beach house. I'm already way over it.
Ridiculous beach house. And for those that can't see this, we've got the ocean immediately behind us. You're probably not seeing our faces because of the light from the ocean, but
and I, for one, am cool with that.
I feel great about it.
Yeah.
But I think the relevant point is that both mechanisms work, and there isn't one way to do things. And this trend of let me get attention and capture attention that is popularized by names that are pushing that narrative.
Let's take a look at that.
Let me follow the point. So that's fine, right? And that, yes, maybe that's the case, but most people do that for the sake of the vanity metric and don't actually capitalize don't actually produce an ROI or an impact the way that they could if they did it a different way. They're so caught up in getting an audience, getting attention, getting the numbers, that they're not actually selling to the 1,000. They're just speaking to the 15,000.
Right.
Right.
And I don't even know that it's just vanity. I think it's a combination of vanity and insecurity.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And the reason I think it's vanity and insecurity is that person that has that audience that doesn't sell anything to that audience, they're afraid if they sell anything to their audience, they'll lose eyeballs. They'll lose followers. I don't want to make an offer. I don't want to be sketchy. I don't want to sell them things and be sleazy like that. When for me, it's a brand. It's all about the brand. And if your brand is one that you never sell anything, yeah, it's going to be abrupt if all of a sudden you're selling something.
Right.
And you might have to ease into it by giving something, though, that is a part of a sales funnel. You got to start off by giving them something, but it's a part of a sales funnel. I sidestep all of that. And how I sidestep that is I believe that which we experience fully vanishes. So I believe people have a subconscious state that they resist being sold. That's a common denominator of most human beings, is that they resist being sold. How do you overcome that? I stand on a stage, and within 2 minutes of being on the stage, I say, who here believes that today I may try to sell you something? And everybody says yes. And I say, I will not let you down.
Yes.
In fact, I'm not going to try to sell you anything. I'm going to sell you something. It's good for me. It's good for you. It's good for the entire economy. Everybody wins.
Yeah.
Well, now my culture and my brand is defined. He sells things. Now I don't have to apologize about selling things. Somebody says, you're just trying to sell me something. I say, are you new? Yes, that's what I do for a living.
Right.
You're just trying to sell me a car here at the car dealership. Oh, yeah, that's what car dealerships do. That's what we do. And so I think that the challenge for so many, you said it best, that's not how it works, old man, on social media. I would agree that the distinction on social media or anything delivered digitally, any kind of even digital marketers, is I'll watch digital marketers that actually do well digitally. They sell well online. They have their sales page. But if they do a live event, they fall flat on their faces.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason they fall flat on their faces is they're not actually good at human interaction.
For sure.
They're just not good face-to-face. And so they're embarrassed that they're selling. In fact, they'll often promote their events and say, nothing's going to be sold. This will not be a pitch fest.
Which is fine.
I don't get it, because if I'm here to teach other people how to make money, then the core foundation of what I'm teaching them is how to sell things. So there's a couple well-known motivational speakers who teach people how to sell things, but then they don't sell things. They don't close. And I find it just ironic because they're standing on stage saying, this is how you sell things.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I have books and tapes. They're available at the back.
Well, look, I think part of, for me, as somebody that grew up in pretty intense sales, like I'm going to sell you some shit right now or I'm never talking to you again, ever, kind of sales. And I'm still going to ask you for referrals either way.
Yes.
I grew up in that space. And for me, I think that the phrase, they can sell ice to Eskimos, is offensive. And I think that the notion of sales gets perverted by language like that and by the notion of a used car salesman. And you've alluded to this, but the people that are very good at sales elect to sell the products that are going to serve the market buying them. And if the market buying them doesn't want them or it's not a good fit, then they don't want to sell it to them.
No,
And when they know that they need it, they will go to no end to make sure that they can sell it to that person because they know that they need it.
it's a moral and ethical obligation. So when you believe in what you're selling, you have a moral and ethical obligation to sell it. And when you don't believe in what you're selling, you have a moral and ethical obligation to stop selling it,
Yes.
even if it changed midstream. But you said something. You said they can sell ice to Eskimos, and then you followed it up with sleazy car salesmen. And what's interesting to me about both of those, once again, they're frames. Yes, I can sell ice to Eskimos. In fact, Eskimos appreciate ice more than anybody because it's their life. They're the ones that do more with ice than anybody else. And sometimes people think, no, you're selling ice to people that already have a lot of ice. Okay. Well, they already have a lot of ice. Once again, clearly they have a use for ice or they wouldn't have a lot of ice.
Interesting.
Then the sleazy car salesman, well, everybody needs a car. So what makes that person sleazy? That person is using sales techniques or tactics. Got it. So what if a person wasn't using sales tactics or techniques? What if a person was so good at influence, it was simply the way they communicated? That's how they communicated things. Again, it's the person who has to force themselves to work out versus the person that says, no, I like playing racquetball with my wife. I don't even think it's a workout. It doesn't feel like a workout. So for me, that's where we want to get people. We want to get people to Steve Jobs level. Steve Jobs was a master salesperson and presenter, but you would never know it. People would just say, oh, no, he's just talking about his products. No. Everything about that presentation, he played every ace. He wore the same black turtleneck and blue jeans every single time. Why? Because he wanted him to look unimportant. He wanted him to be baseline. And the thing he held in his hand was the miracle, the center of all attention, nothing to do with him. When he spoke in very low, dulcet tones. Why? Those tones speak directly to the subconscious mind. That's why a hypnotist that doesn't have a cold uses those tones because they vibrate on a frequency that speaks directly to the subconscious mind. So the key, we've talked about this a bit before, is the person that's presenting and 90% of their presentation is content and then 10% is closing. It cannot be that way. The whole thing needs to be content and the whole thing needs to be closing.
Yes.
There can be no separation. And if there is a separation, therein lies the challenge. And that's where I step in. And I say, here's how we stop you from pitching and we help you start presenting.
I love that. I think that it serves everybody to think about life through the lens of it's all one thing. And when we hire new people inside the walls of Easy Pay Direct, there's consistently a leadership consideration around crafting narrative, reminding people, managing, etc. And when we hire people, I very much believe that the job starts for that person with the initial exposure. And so how the job post is written and or what platform it's on, and then the experience going through the interview process, and then the onboarding process up to the initial days of working, the initial month getting onboarded, those are all part of hiring.
Yep.
Right? And I don't look at that any differently than any other sales funnel, right? They're all part of the sales funnel of doing it. But if you don't look at it that way, then it creates incongruency in the process for the buyer. And in this case, it's the new employee, right? I think we've all been at a thing where suddenly you get the pitch and you're like, and it turns you off. If it's all the pitch the whole time, it's more comfortable.
Well, and I don't know if it's a pitch, if everybody knows what the intention is from the beginning.
If everybody does.
Right.
Right.
And everybody agrees upon it.
Yes.
So again,
I think that's my point.
yeah,
right?
it comes back to the timeshare thing. hey, Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Public, 9 out of 10 people have no intention of listening to my presentation. They're just here for the free stuff, the goodies. 1 couple out of 10, they have an open mind. They're good people. And they'll at least keep an open mind during the presentation, and they won't make up their mind till the very end. Now, I don't care whatever you are. Whatever you are is fine with me. It would help me, though, to know which you are. Are you one of the 9 that are just here to pretend like you want something? Or will you really give me a sincere opportunity to show you our product? Now, the consumer has one of 2 choices. They can either tell the truth, no, we're just here for the goodies. That's fine. Or they can lie, which is more likely what they'll do. No, we'll give you serious consideration. Well, if they lie, guess what? They got to act like they want to buy for 2 hours. And if they do lie and say they're going to, give you consideration, 2 hours of lying to me, acting as if they want to buy, makes them want to buy. But let's imagine they tell the truth. We're just here for Cirque du Soleil tickets. We're just here to go to Disney World. That's all we want. That's the only reason we're on this timeshare tour. Then the salesperson says, thank you. You have no idea what pressure that takes off of me because I'm a commission-only salesperson. That's how I earn a living. And if I don't sell to you, I don't get paid. Except you telling me you're not going to buy right up front makes me feel better because now I'm going to give my whole presentation and I don't have an expectation. I know I got to pay my rent somewhere else. Except I still have to do the 2-hour presentation. I apologize. I can't just give you the tickets. So would you do me a favor? It would help me practice and it'll make the time go a lot faster. Would you pretend for 2 hours that you wanted to buy, that you liked my presentation? Would you help me out with that? Okay. Well, now they pretend for 2 hours again. And if you act as if something's true long enough, it becomes true and they buy. We gave David Siegel of Westgate Properties a 50% bump with that technique.
Amazing.
I call it totally non-covert selling. Don't be covert. In fact, just the opposite.
I love it.
Tell them exactly what you're doing. In my seminars, like I said, I do a section where we teach inside of Turning Point, my foundational course, which we're going to once again gift your viewers, that anybody, the first 50 people that contact my office and say that they are, guests of Easy Pay Direct, that we'll give them 2 tickets to Turning Point. At any rate, at Turning Point, I teach influence. I teach all these strategies of influence. And then I have some random person in the audience stand up. And I say, I made this offer yesterday for this $5,000 offer, and you didn't go to the back. You didn't buy. Can you tell me the reason? And then they'll tell me their reason. I don't call it objection. I call it resistance. And the reason I don't call it objection is an objection is outside of us. When I train salespeople, I tell them, call it a piece of resistance. And your job is to play with that customer's resistance. Don't take it personally. Just play with their resistance. Make them okay for having that resistance.
Yes.
And so what happens is they give me their resistance, and in front of the whole audience, I play with it. And in front of the whole audience, I use the techniques, gambits, strategies, communication processes that I just taught the whole room with the person I'm communicating with, and I close them on the spot. And they grab their credit card, and they walk to the back of the room, they plunk it down on the table, and they buy the very thing they didn't buy yesterday when I went through that process with them again. I go silent, I just let them walk to the back of the room. When they get back to the table, I turn to the rest of the audience and I say, do you realize you just watched me do what I just taught you? Did it seem natural? How many of you would love to have that same level of skill and belief and congruency selling your products and services? And of course, all the hands go up and they get it. And it comes back to that idea that I wasn't covert. I wasn't underhanded. I wasn't trying to slide something in. I said, I'm selling you right now. I'm closing you right now.
Yeah. So it's 2023, nearing the end. And through the decades that you've been doing this,
40 years.
I'm curious, was that the approach from the beginning, or did it evolve into that?
It evolved.
So I ask partly because in the era of the internet, right, the last 25 years, and specifically the last 15, things change quickly.
People think that.
Well, okay, you can give me the counterpoint in a second, but things change quickly. And so what I mean by that really is that the amount of data that hits you is so much larger than it was in 1995.
Yes.
And so you might see a pitch in 1995 in a year, or if you're a seminar junkie, you might see a handful. In 2023, you might see fucking 1,000 in a year because everything's a pitch online. And so marketing is iterative, but it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over. So the infomercials that ran in the 80s, some perversion of them is running today.
They call them video sales letters.
Right, a VSL, or it's maybe a YouTube ad, right? Maybe it's a 3-minute YouTube ad or 5-minute or whatever, or it's 90 seconds.
In fact, I saw one of yours the other day.
Post. Well, thank you.
Good stuff.
Good. We throw ours out.
Yeah, I pulled out my credit card. I had to call the number.
That's great.
Filled out the form.
So as things have changed, I think there was an era that I can remember when commerce on the internet was newer, call it 2007, 8, 9, where the illusion of scarcity, which was bullshit, but the illusion of scarcity
usually it is,
was effective.
Right.
Now today, the illusion of scarcity, people call your bluff. Hey, one-time offer. Hey, I'm doing this thing live. Hey.
Or if your name is Billie Jean, I'm retiring for the 30th time.
Well,
did I just say that out loud? Yes, I did.
We will take that up with Billie Jean. Billie Jean, we're going to talk about this.
No, and I love Billie, and Billie does great stuff. I think that's a bad gambit, though.
Well,
if you're not actually retiring, I think that's a bad gambit, because one of the things that I believe is there's no gray area. So again, if he's actually retiring, God bless, that's awesome. But if you're not actually retiring and it's a gambit, people will call you on that BS sooner or later.
That's actually my point, right? Is that, and I would argue that the mechanism that you're using now probably would have always worked, and maybe it did. And that's why I asked.
And it still does.
Did you use it from the beginning? But the idea of, I'm not bullshitting, I'm going to tell you exactly how it is right now. I am going to sell you something. Expectation from beginning to end is effective today.
Yeah, so that, I thought you were asking me something different.
No, I'm asking you if that always was for you, and if you always did it that way.
No, I didn't always from the beginning say I'm here to sell you something. It happened fairly quickly because I realized that the sooner I got people over that piece of resistance, the audience sits there when you're presenting, and they're like this. And they're just looking at you, and the moment they realize you're going to sell something in your presentation, they go to this. What are you going to sell me? What are you going to sell me? And then when you finally tell them, they go, okay, now I know.
Right.
And they uncross their arms. So why wouldn't you want to get them to uncross their arms early?
Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to sell. In fact, I teach people, if you're going to make an offer, tell them early on what the offer is, tell them full retail, and if you're going to discount it, tell them you're going to discount it. So I've got an event. It's called Turning Point. The tickets sell for $3,000 a piece. Of course, that's not the investment you'll make. I'm going to reduce the investment and give you a better than money back guarantee. So in that phrase, I said a bunch of things, didn't I?
Yep.
Manage the expectation. The investment's $3,000. I'm going to reduce the investment, give you a better than money back guarantee. But I also said the words, that's not the investment you'll make. You're going to invest a lot less, which is highly assumptive, isn't it?
It is.
It's me saying, no, you're going to invest. Of course. I mean,
highly assumptive and the open loop.
Yes.
Right?
And so, when it comes back down to it, once again, I believe you don't say anything that's not true at all. Never. Always tell the truth. You can create scarcity. There's the digital marketers that say, oh yeah, we're throwing this in the vault. We're not going to, the offer ends here. We're going to throw it in the vault, never coming out again. Well, if it's never coming out again, that's fine. But usually they're lying. Usually it's in the vault. Maybe they pull it out in a year or 6 months or whatever. That's still a lie. And I don't believe in lying. I don't think you have to. You can say, if I have a $60,000 event that I'm teaching at my home, and I know there's a diminishing return. If I have more than 20 people at the event, I cannot give the same service that I could give with less than 20 people, limited to 20 people. That's real. It's factual. It's a line not in the sand. It's a line in the cement. And so that's real. So yes, I believe if you're going to craft an offer, you need to figure out what is the scarcity. Where do we draw the lines? How do we define this in such a way that it's a limited number of people? You might say, Easy Pay Direct might say, we unfortunately don't work with people doing less than $1 million a year. While you do need service, unfortunately, with what we do, we just don't have the bandwidth to give you the service that you need. And we'd be happy to refer you to somebody who can take care of you.
Yeah.
Somebody calls me up and says, hey, can you do a non-smoking hypnotherapy session with me? My response is, I don't really do that. Well, money's not an object. Okay. It's $1 million. $1 million? I don't have $1 million. Okay. Or $1 million? Okay. I want the best. Well, if they're going to pay me $1 million, I'll find a way to want to do it. But I don't want to do it. So I'm going to throw out a number that would preclude anybody from working with me. And so, again, I don't think things change. I think their representation changes. I think the frame changes. I think the infomercial of the 80s and the 90s is now the video sales letter, the landing page of today. I think that the infomercial star, in fact, I even said this the other day. I was in my massage chair and I was meditating and I was thinking about things. And I said the influencer is the infomercial star of yesterday.
Yeah,
That's what they are.
definitely. But wrapped differently.
Not even wrapped differently, I don't think. It's presented in more pieces.
Yeah. When I say wrapped differently, I think that the social construct around them is different. And so, I think this is all fluid, but I think we're in an era currently where there is an illusion for a young generation, the youngest of the generations of adults, that think that there's some value in the influencer people. And I think they're starting to realize that it's a gameable system and that they're not providing value in many cases, or that it's just entertainment and that is the value. And I think they're starting to figure that out.
I think what happened was the gatekeepers went away.
Well, right. So infomercials, there were only a few of them. I mean,
Because there was only 3 networks.
right, relatively speaking. And you weren't a celebrity if you were doing an infomercial.
You were.
You're
too young to know this.
you were of a specific.
How'd that feel? That feel good? That feel really good?
I love it, but I wasn't that young, right? So I grew up.
But you are, because Tony Little and Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, who are both born out of infomercials.
Yeah.
That's how they got their celebrity. If Tony's infomercial through Guthrie Ranker had not hit, he wouldn't be where he is
100%
today.
agree, but Tony wouldn't be a celebrity today had he not done the Netflix series, I Am Not Your Guru, or Netflix show, I Am Not Your Guru.
He was already established.
He was established, but not across the board. What he was an infomercial person. So he was selling shit on infomercials. And so there was a category of people that had value from him and liked him, but he wasn't an influencer for that reason. The people that liked him, loved him. The other people dubbed him a motivational speaker, air quotes. And I was in the first camp, by the way.
I respect that. And I would agree to have a different opinion on this, that he's still viewed that way. I'm still viewed that way. Dean Grass, you're still viewed that way. There are a number of people that think Gary Vee's full of crap.
Sure.
There are people that think Grant Cardone is the worst thing that ever happened to the planet. And again, if we cater to people that don't like us, we're out of business.
I agree. I just think that the frame of society has shifted where there is the opportunity to see people in different ways and form your own opinion slightly. Where previously all you had was, it's an infomercial. Now you have this multi-dimensional kaleidoscope of what the fuck is an influencer.
Right.
And so my mother looking at the influencer in her 70s versus a 15-year-old looking at the same influencer draws a different conclusion about the celebrity status of that person, where a infomercial person in the 80s wasn't a product person, right? They were just selling some shit on this infomercial.
Maybe.
Okay.
But again, having lived through that,
Yeah.
having lived through the experience on both sides of it, if I had known what I know now, then I'd be worth $50 billion. I just didn't know. I didn't realize that's what that was. And so we had this discussion in part 1 of this interview. 95% of all podcasts shouldn't be.
Sure.
There's no value. They're bad content. The challenge is everything got reversed. It used to be the cream rose to the top because the gatekeepers only presented the best content. Thousands of infomercials never got on the air.
Yep.
So, today people have podcasts that nobody listens to. Back in the 80s and 90s, people produced infomercials that tested and nobody bought, so they never ran the media to them.
Sure.
It's the same thing now. There are people that, that say, oh, I've got 1 million followers on Instagram. Great. Do you sell anything? Do you make any money at all? Does it really matter how many followers you have? Because you're not monetizing. It doesn't mean anything other than your vanity's intact. And I think that is a whole nother conversation for another time, that again, people have to understand what's their motives. I'm a business person. My children, as we were having this interview, went out to go trick-or-treating. It's Halloween while we're recording this.
It's been very weird. We've had weird creatures wandering down the stairs while we're talking for the last...
It's a good life, though.
Yes.
And I'm at a different stage of my life where, like I said, I'm lazy and still making millions and millions and millions of dollars every single year doing exactly what I want to do. Could I formulate things and make more money? Absolutely, without a doubt. Do I want to jump through those hoops? Do I want to work 50 or 60 hours a week? No, I don't. Not interested. We're watching the sunset behind us. It's going to be a beautiful one. This is what I like. When we wrap up this interview, I'm going to go jump in the cold plunge and hang out.
I love that. So on that note, for those that aren't watching, I'm going to lift the curtain and
Oh, yeah.
show what we've got. And sorry, you're going to see the little light ring as well because I don't care. But great. So like you said, we could talk about this, another conversation for that.
So I want to just add one last thing to that, because you're an influencer, except you went about it the opposite direction. Am I right? And I don't know your history.
100%.
You launched your business first.
100%.
Then you launched your podcast. So you were somebody like Gary Vee did that in that process too. He already had a successful business. And then he said, hey, I'm going to talk to people about my business. You did the same thing. I think that's the smart way to go. A lot of people go the other route. They say, hey, I'm going to launch a podcast. That's going to make me famous. And then I'm going to start selling things or have a business. And again, okay, I just don't get it.
Yeah, and my belief is that there's space for both. And I think that the Mr. Beasts of the world who are focused on entertaining. And
well, again, he's a whole nother product.
He is a whole nother product. He's not even a fair representation.
Well, he's the reverse of the whole engineer.
Exactly.
He's not even in it for the money.
No, he's an entertainment product, though.
Yes, and he's not in it for the money. He's purely in it for the entertainment.
Totally. But to your point, he was focused on getting attention and then selling shit afterwards, monetizing. And you're right, he's a bad example for that reason. But I still think that, so I'm a bootstrap person. My whole life held on to this belief that it's not a business if it doesn't make money.
Right.
And so what are you doing if it's not making money? But I struggle with that because it's hard to argue that the Ubers of the world, the Amazons of the world that go for years running at a net loss aren't of value to the world. So that's
a different kind of enterprise, though.
Agreed. But those are of value to the world.
Absolutely.
So the parallel there is that the content producers that are creating entertainment that monetize later, whatever they're doing to get eyeballs, if they monetize later through another mechanism, fine. I think that's great. I lean in your direction, but I also, as I've continued through life and watched specifically our clients that, have a huge audience and they're like, oh, I should sell supplements to my audience. Oh, I should sell a coaching program. I watch all this happen, and I just think that there are a million entrepreneurial paths. And whatever you want to do, I will watch you do it. And I've got the one that I think is okay, right?
Yes. Well, and that is it. So that's full circle. I love being on stage. I love interacting with people. Having 10 siblings, growing up dirt poor. My background, people say, how are you so good with people? I have 10 siblings. So, it was psychological warfare to sit down at the dining room table and see who was going to get the, last hot dog and who was going to actually get ketchup on their hot dog because there's a limited amount of ketchup. And so for me, I'm amused at human nature. I'm amused at people and what they do. This whole business of Halloween is a multi-billion-dollar business. For what? It's a completely made-up holiday. It was All Hallows Eve. It was the night before a Christian holiday. And it was created so that people could sell merchandise. And, you take Halloween or Valentine's Day or any of these very non-religious holidays, and what were they put together for? Purely for commerce. And again, if you're not selling something, you're not actually in business. And if you have a hobby, awesome. If you enjoy your hobby, don't pretend it's a business, though.
Well, we've covered lots of things and we keep talking for 7 hours, but the sun is setting.
How beautiful is that?
It's amazing, man. It's amazing. Last time you pointed people to Sylver.com.
Yes.
SYLVER.com. Any closing sentiments for people listening or watching?
No, I've had a great time chatting with you.
Likewise.
I love your energy. I love what you're about. And I love the fact that we don't agree on a lot of stuff. It just makes for healthy rhetoric. And I think that that's the biggest thing that I would like to leave people with in this interview is you don't have to agree with people, number one, to really like them a lot. And number two, to get great value and challenge your own thinking. And then finally, to realize that ultimately we get everything that's going on in our brain, that our identity determines whether or not what we're getting is appropriate for us or not. And if our brain says, that's not me, I deserve better than that, guess what? You'll reject that thing that's not good enough for you, and you'll keep going for the thing that's more appropriate for you. The thing is, though, in order to raise your net worth, you've got to raise your self-esteem. How do you raise your self-esteem? Better conversations inside of your head, better surrounding yourself with people that would lift you up and be positive and feed you in ways that would make you realize we're in this together. And so that's the last message. If you'd like to check out Turning Point, contact my office. send an email to AC, like air conditioning, AC at certaintyinc.com, and tell them that you heard me on this podcast. You'd like 2 tickets for Turning Point, or you can just call my office at 1-800-92-POWER.
I love it, man. Marshall Sylver.
Cool, brother. Good stuff.
Likewise.
If you learned one thing on this episode, share it with another entrepreneur. They need to hear it. Also subscribe so that new episodes just show up on your phone. It's a lot easier that way. And if you want the really good stuff, check out our free BAM! Tactics and Strategies course. It's where we curate the best tips, tricks, and tools that our guests know, whether they've shared them on the podcast or not. Just go to beyondamill.com. You'll also find previous episodes and show notes at beyondamill.com.